Yeah. So, so today we're going to discuss about the log shipping, which is another high availability in SQL Server. And we need to understand what is the difference between database mirroring and log shipping. Why we should go for a log shipping instead of database mirroring. Having said that, every high availability technique has got some advantages and at the same time some restrictions or limitations. So coming to the log shipping, it is something like we can maintain the high availability at database level. It is almost same as database mirroring. In database mirroring also, we can set up high availability at database level, and using log shipping, the same we can maintain high availability at database level. We can maintain copy of your original database. So I just try to list out the differences apart from the database mirroring. In database mirroring, our secondary database will be in restoring mode, right? But coming to log shipping, our secondary database will be in read-only mode. So all the users, we can ask all our reporting users to connect to the secondary servers. So with this way, we can offload, we can divert our reporting load from the production onto the standby server. And the other major difference is in database mirroring, we can maintain only one copy of our original database. But in log shipping, you can set up multiple secondaries. You can set up more than two, or if you want, you can set up 3 or 4 secondary copies of your original database. So that is the main difference between database mirroring and log shipping. And the other difference is in log shipping, we don't have automatic failover. In log shipping, we don't have automatic failover. That is the one more difference. So let me show you a PowerPoint. So in database mirroring, what is a technique how the data will be mirrored onto the mirrored server? We know that it is with the help of log cache that will be transferred from the principal database onto the mirror database. But coming to the log shipping, as it sounds, the transaction log backups will be shipped from the primary database onto the secondary database. Hope we are all familiar with the backups, the full backup, differential or transaction log. So how the mechanism will work for the log shipping is, once you set up log shipping without any manual intervention, your SQL itself will continuously take log backups of your primary server database, and those log backups will be restored on your secondary server on regular basis. So this is how the old technique will be with log shipping. So SQL Server log shipping allows you to automatically send transaction log backups from a primary database on a primary server instance to one or more secondary database on a separate secondary instances. So the overall technique behind log shipping is shipping the transaction log backups from primary database onto the secondary database. There's a whole technique behind this log shipping. So the prerequisites we need is the primary database should be in full or bulk logged recovery model. But the best is to have full recovery model. It is because each and every transaction will be recorded in the log file. If your database is in full recovery model, each and every transaction will be recorded in the log file, and when you take a log backup, those transactions will be copied and restored onto your secondary database. So that is the reason the database should be in full recovery model. If you have a simple recovery model, the database is not eligible for log shipping, and the same for mirroring. In log shipping, if the database is in simple recovery model, we know that we can't take a log backups, so it doesn't work. The database should be in full recovery model. And the other prerequisite is we need to have both the primary server and the secondary server should be running in same SQL version. If your primary server is 2012, then your secondary servers supposed to be on 2012. But there is an exception. There is an exception in log shipping is your primary server can be a lower version and your secondary servers can be higher version. You can still set up log shipping in those scenarios. I repeat it again. If you have a scenario to set up a log shipping from lower version, that is from 2008 R2 on to higher version, that is 2012. So your 2008 R2 is your primary database and 2012 is your secondary database. In that cases, you can still configure log shipping. It's still possible, but only one way. When a failover happens, your 2012 will become primary and your 2008 R2 will become secondary, and that time your log shipping will not work. It is because you can always restore the backups from lower versions onto higher versions. But vice versa is not possible. You cannot restore a backup from higher version onto a lower version. So that is an exception, but we don't see any organizations following that exception unless there is a specific requirement. So most of the times we will have our primary and secondary instances running on same SQL versions. And the other important thing is switching the recovery models. If your database is part of log shipping, you are not supposed to change the recovery model of the database. If you change it, then your log shipping will break. So please do remember this point. If your database is in log shipping and if someone tries to change a recovery model, then your log shipping going to break. So we are not supposed to change the recovery model of a database that is participating in log shipping. Why it breaks log shipping when you change a recovery model? What exactly happens if you change recovery model of a database? We already discussed this point when we are on backups and restores, and even I show you that I've changed the recovery model and then I try to take log backup. Yeah, that we understand that we cannot take a log backup in simple recovery model. But let me give a scenario that a database is in log shipping. Okay, so one of your colleague, your teammate, he doesn't know that the database is in log shipping. Okay, so what he did is he changed the recovery model from full to simple. Okay, and immediately he realized that database is participating in log shipping, so he switched back the recovery model to full again, but still the log shipping will break. That's perfect, Venkat. It's because of the LSN. As soon as you change the recovery model, the LSN will break. And the next time if you want to proceed with your log backups, the only option is you have to take a full backup. Then only the LSN values will be reset. Is everyone clear? Right. So the terms and definitions, like going back to database mirroring, we have used some terms like principal server, principal database, mirrored server, mirror database, witness server. So in the same way, for log shipping, we will be using a different terms. The primary server, the primary database. So primary server is the server where your which is a production server where you are hosting your original database. And primary database is a database which you think is a main original database. And then after, we have got a secondary server. Secondary server is a server or an instance where a copy of database is placed. And the same for a secondary database. Your secondary database is nothing but a copy of your original database. And your secondary database will always be in either standby mode or restoring. You have two options here. You can still set it as standby mode or restoring mode. But most of the time we want to utilize all the resources of the SQL Server, so what we do is, instead of keeping it in restoring mode, we try to keep it in standby mode so that we can use the database for read purpose. And we do have a third server, which is a monitor server. So I got a question. What if we check copy only backup option while taking log backups? It won't disturb LSN sequence, right? For copy only log backups, possibly we need to test it, but for full backup we take a copy only full backup which will not break the LSN values. But if you really want to take a log backup, we can use the same log backups that were taken by your log shipping. Log shipping will take log backups every often. If you set it up to take every 10 minutes, your log shipping will try to take every 10 minutes a log backup. So if you want it, you can use those log backups. You can just copy the log backup files. But if you really want to use a full backup, possibly maybe your application team or someone is asking you to provide a latest a full backup of a database, maybe in middle of business hours, then you can go with copy only option. And the third server is a monitor server, and this monitor server doesn't provide any automatic failover. This monitor server will just monitor your primary server database and your secondary server database, and it does hold some history information. This monitor server will hold some history information, like when was the last log backup taken from your primary database, and when was the last time it got copied, I mean the backup file from the primary server onto the secondary server. When was it happened, and when was the last time the restore process has happened. So all these history information will be stored in the monitor server, but monitor server will not provide any automatic failover. So I've got a primary server here. I'm just trying to show you an architecture and how it's gonna work in real time. So I've got a primary server, and in the primary server I've got a database. There might be n number of database. I picked up one of the database on that instance, and have got a secondary server with the same SQL version. And the first thing, how we did for database mirroring, the same thing we have to repeat for log shipping as well. Before we start our log shipping configuration, we need to take a full and log backup from our primary database and restore them on your secondary server. So once you restore them, we need to select with standby option. If you go back to database mirroring, what the option we have selected, it is with no recovery. But in log shipping, while restoring the databases, backups we need to use with standby option. There's a question, is it compulsory 3 servers in log shipping? No. Monitor server is an optional. So at this moment have restored database on my secondary server, and that database will be read-only mode because I have selected with standby option. So once you are done with this backup and restore, then the next thing we need to do is create a backup folder in your primary server. We need to create a backup folder on the primary server. It is required because when we take a log backups of our primary database, we need to keep them locally on our server. Okay, so to keep those log backups, we create a folder, and that folder, that backup folder, should be shared with your secondary server. Let's say your secondary server services, the SQL services in your secondary server are running with an account called John. Just an example. So your backup folder on primary server should be shared with that John service account. So that is how your secondary server will go and copy those backup files. So ultimately we need to create a folder on our primary server and we need to share it. And then after we need to create one more folder on our secondary server, which is a copy folder. And then after, once you set up a log shipping, your SQL Server will continuously take log backups from your primary database and keep those log backups on your backup folder, and that backup file will be copied over onto the secondary server, and then it will be restored. So in log shipping, once we set up log shipping, 3 SQL agent jobs will be created. So you don't need to create any SQL agent jobs manually. SQL itself will create. So once you configure log shipping, at backend, 3 SQL jobs will be created. The first job is to take log backups on your primary database. So you can schedule them how frequent you want to run it. So the default is 15 minutes. That means every 15 minutes your log backup job will run and it take the log backup of your primary database and keep it in backup folder. And the next job is a copy job. The copy job will be created on your secondary server, and the responsibility of the copy job is to copy the backup file from backup folder onto copy folder. So the copy job will be created in the secondary server, and the work of that copy job is to go and copy the backup file, the latest backup file from the backup folder on primary server onto copy folder on secondary server. So with that, the copy job work is done. Then after, the restore job will come into picture. The third job, restore job, that is also created in your secondary server. So the restore job, it restores whatever the log backup it copied here, that backup file will be restored on your secondary server. So this mechanism will continuously happens. It depends upon how you schedule. If you schedule it to run for every 15 minutes, then for every 15 minutes a log backup will be taken, and for every 15 minutes the copy job will go and pick up the latest backup file and place it in copy folder, and for every 15 minutes your restore job will restore the latest log backup from this folder. So this is what happens all the time. So we have got a backup job, copy job, and restore job. So overall log shipping works on these 3 jobs. So any questions? Okay, I've just listed out the jobs here. The backup job, it will take the backup from your primary database. Then copy job will copy the backup file from your primary server onto the secondary server, and the restore job will restore those backups onto the database. And then last we have got a alert job. It just monitors, and if something goes wrong, it will alert. It will send an email to you. And this is a picture of multiple secondaries. Whatever I have shown just before, I picked up only one secondary, right? One primary and one secondary. Here this picture is one primary, multiple secondaries. So you can see here this is my primary instance and this is my primary database, and these are all secondaries. This is my secondary, and this is one secondary, and this is third. I mean total three secondaries I have got in this picture. This is one primary, secondary 1, secondary 2, and secondary 3. And I'm taking a backups onto a network location, okay? And this backup folder is shared with these three secondary servers. So the backup job on your primary server will run and keep the backups over here, and the copy job and restore job will be created on all the three servers. And what they does is the copy job will go and copy the backup file and keep it in secondary, first secondary, and the second secondary, the copy job will go and copy the same backup file and it keeps in own server, and the same thing it does happen for the third server. So this is for multiple secondaries. And if you have a monitor server, it will just records the status and history information. That's it. It does not provide any automatic failover. So did you got any idea how it works? Yes, I'm waiting for your confirmation. Do you have any questions? If you have any questions, you can always ask me. Don't hesitate about it. I can explain it again. A good question, Venkat. What happens if in a disaster? Okay, having said that, there is no automatic failover, right? So manually, someone has to go and do a quick failover. That is one of the restriction we can say for lock shipping. You don't have automatic failover. I will show you how to do a quick failover. So any more questions, or do you want me to go ahead and show you the demo? Okay, all right. I hope you are good with this. So let me take you through the demo. Okay, the same thing I'm taking again. I'm assuming this is my primary server and this is my secondary server. And among this instance, I've got so many databases, so I don't want to create any new. So let me pick one of the database here. Okay, I will try to take a database called HSBC. I'm assuming this is my primary database. So the requirements are the instance version should be same. So I'm good with that. And the next prerequisite is to have database in full recovery model. So go and check whether this database has got full recovery model. Yes, the database is in full recovery model, so we are good. So let me check if we have got any tables in this database. Yeah, there are quite few tables available in this database. So we are good with the prerequisites, and the next step is to take a full backup and log backup of this database and restore them on your secondary server with standby option. So let me take full and log backup. Or else I'll just write a query. HSBC underscore full dot BAK. I'm executing this. Okay, I need to connect it again. Okay, new query. Execute it. A full backup has been taken, and now next I will take a log backup. And just rename it. Okay, we are done with the full and log backup. So in real time, what we do is assume this is my primary server. So I have taken a full and log backup here, and then we move those full and log backups. We move these two backup files onto the secondary server, and then we try to restore them. But at this moment, both the instances are in same machine, so I'm not moving them. I'm just leaving them there itself. But in real time, you have to move those two files onto the secondary server and then do a quick restore. So going back to my secondary instance, I'm restoring those backup files. Browse to the backup file here, the full backup, and you can go into files, just relocate them and go to options. Here I'll be selecting restore with standby. Okay, before I select, you can see there is a standby file which is grayed out, but as soon as I select restore with standby, you can see this field got enabled, and this is for a file will be created in your default location, and we call this file as transaction undo file. In shortcut, we call it as a TUF file, TUF, transaction undo file. And what is the importance of this file? Let me explain you. When we take a backup of a database, there is chance during that backup users might be updating the data, right? Users might be updating the data during a backup happening on the database. So all those transactions will be written in the log file initially. So when you kickstart your backup, first thing what it does is it will start reading your MDF file from page 1, okay, to end of your MDF file. If you have 1000 pages, so it starts from 1 till 1000. Okay, in this duration, the time it took maybe 2 minutes, assume the backup to read the data from your MDF file from page 1 to page 1000, it took 2 minutes. So in these 2 minutes, when your backup file is reading at a page number 500, a user might have updated a record which is in page 20. So that change, your backup doesn't go back to page number 20 and pick the change. It doesn't happen. your backup file will move forward by ignoring that update to end of that MDF file, the page number 1000. Once it reaches the page number 1000, then it starts reading data from your LDF file. So obviously, whatever the user changed the record for page number 20 will be available in your log file. So that information will be picked in your, will be written inside your log file. And at the same time, there might be certain commands still executing. They are not yet committed, but still executing, and they are available in your log file. So those transactions will also be written inside into your backup file. And once the backup is done, when you try to restore that backup on a different instance, what all the uncommitted transactions were there during the backup, those uncommitted transactions will be rolled back during the restore process. Those transactions will be rolled back, and the user who have updated a record which is in page 20, so that particular record will be roll forwarded. So there will be two mechanisms here: roll forward, roll backward. So roll forward is something during the backup process, if there are any committed transactions happened, that will be rolled forwarded upon the restore. And if there are any uncommitted transactions on your running on your database during the backup, those transactions will be rolled back at restore time. So those uncommitted transactions will be stored in this file. If there are any uncommitted transactions during the backup process, so those uncommitted transactions will be stored in transaction undo file, or we call it as a rollback undo file. And what's the advantage of keeping those data in this file? It is just because, let's say I have taken a log backup at 10 o'clock in the morning, and when I took the log backup during that time, there are 5 uncommitted transactions. When I say uncommitted transactions, that means transactions are still running, not yet committed. So you took a backup, and when you try to restore that backup file, those uncommitted transactions will be copied into this rollback undo file. And let's say after an hour, I went back and I took a second log backup of the same database. So the log backup succeeds, and when I try to restore that second log backup on the same database, before it restores, your SQL Server will just compare that backup file with this rollback undo file just to see, okay, in previous backup there were 5 uncommitted transactions, whether those 5 uncommitted transactions are committed in the latest backup. So it's just gonna check about the previous uncommitted transaction status. If they are committed in the current log backup, then the data in this file will be cleared. Hope you understand. So this rollback undo file is just to keep the uncommitted transactions. So I go on to OK. So this will restore a full database with standby mode. That means you can read data from the file. Little bit confusion with tough file. I repeat it again. I have a database and I'm taking a backup on the database. That database is a hugely transactional database. Assume it's a banking database, and every second users are doing some transactions. Okay, I have started backing up my database. So my database backup might take around 30 minutes to finish. So during this 30 minutes of time, the users they might update their accounts or their mobile numbers or their email address, or they do some transactions here and there. All those information is uncommitted, because during the backup process your backup file doesn't know whether those are succeeded or not, right? So when you run a backup on the database, it will first read all the data from your MDF file, which is a committed, and then it comes to the LDF file and it reads all the data. And if there is still a transaction going on, those transactions are uncommitted transactions. Those uncommitted transactions will be kept in a tough file. If your backup process is taking 5 minutes to finish, but a user executed a query which is inserting some 10 million rows, and that 10 million rows insert might take 20 minutes. So the user insert query is taking 20 minutes, and at the same time you have started your backup, and within 5 minutes your backup has completed. But at the same time user query is still running. And the time you took a backup, possibly the user transaction might have inserted around 5 or 10,000 records. So those 5 or 10,000 records will be only in log file, because the transaction is still running, not yet committed. When we take a backup of the database, those 5 or 10,000 transactions will be pushed onto a tough file, because those are not committed during the backup time. And later, after an hour, you go back and take a second log backup of the database, and by that time the user 10,000 records were successfully inserted. So you took a second log backup and you try to restore it. So while restoring, your SQL Server will go back and check the tough file, saying that, okay, when you are trying to restore a first backup, when you restored a first log backup, during that time there were 10,000 records which are not committed, still going on. Are they committed and available in the current log file, that is in the current log backup? So obviously in this example, yes, all the record what the user inserted, those are available in the log file. So the SQL Server will clear the tough file, saying that, okay, what all you said uncommitted transactions, they are now committed and available in the log file. So clear off. And when we run the second log backup, if there are any active transactions that time, those uncommitted transactions will be kept in the log file. That is a tough file. Did I made it clear? Tough file is basically it keeps some uncommitted transactions, that's it. The ongoing uncommitted transactions. Okay, I have restored a full backup. Will it be available only with standby option? Yes. So on top of it, I will be restoring a log backup. So I'll be restoring a log backup again with standby option. Restore with standby. So we are done with the restores. Now we can go and configure the log shipping. So you can go to your primary database. This is my primary database. Right click on the database. So before we start configuration, we need to create a folder for backup and copy. We need to have a location, right, to keep our backup files. So let me create a folders inside this backup folder. I create a new folder called ls underscore backup. This is to keep backup files. As I'm using both instance and single machine, so I'm creating a copy folder as well in the same folder. But in real time, the copy folder will be in your secondary server. And then I need to share this backup file, sorry, this backup folder. It is because your secondary server will come and pick the file from this backup folder. So you have to share this backup folder. Okay, just I'm reconfirming it. So permissions, everyone, full control. All right. So I have just shared the backup folder so that the secondary server, the copy job in secondary server can come here and pick the files from this folder. Okay. To check whether you have successfully shared it, so what you can do is you can browse to your machine name. So I need to find out what is my machine name. Okay, it's desktop GV. It's a bit of, let me get it from here. Okay, this is my machine name. So in order to confirm whether you have shared it properly, so you can go to your secondary server. In real time, you have to go to your secondary server and provide the double backslash and primary server name, then just click on enter. Then you should see your backup folder, the one which you have shared. So this is what I have shared. So you need to make an access on this folder. So we have created the folders, backup and copy, and we have shared the backup folder as well. So now we try to set it up, the log shipping. You have to go back to your primary database, right click on it, go to task, and then select option called ship transaction logs. Enable this as a primary database. Okay, we are treating this database as your primary. So just enable it, and then having said that, overall the log shipping will work with three options, with three things: backup, copy, restore, right? So overall in this configuration, we'll be dealing with those three settings: the backup, the copy, and restore. So the first, we are dealing with the backup settings. So click on it, network path to backup folder, where you want to take your backups. So you can provide, if you are trying to take your backups on network location, then you can provide your backup folder, something like here. So you need to provide your backup location where you want to backup your files. And if you come back here, delete files older than. If you want to automatically delete the files that are older than 72 hours, that is older than 3 days, then you can set this option. Your SQL Server will go and delete the files from your backup folder that are older than 3 days. And then after, you can see a backup job. So this is what the backup job will be created on your primary server. And the schedule, you can see the default schedule is to run every 15 minutes. So your backups will be taking for every 15 minutes. So I don't want to go with the default because I have to wait for another 45 minutes to show you the output of this whole configuration. So I just change the schedule. Probably I bring it down to 3 minutes. So you can click OK. So now you can see the schedule has been changed to run for every 3 minutes. And you can click on OK. So we are done with the backup setting. And still we have two more things to do. That is copy and restore. So you need to add a secondary server details here. So you can click on add and then click connect. Provide your secondary server instance name and just check whether it got selected the right database. And the first window is asking you whether you have copied your database onto your secondary instance. If not, you remember, right, at the initial step we have taken a full line log backup of the database and we have restored on the secondary server with standby option. So if you have not done that part, you can ask your SQL Server with this option. If you have not already restored the database on the secondary server, then you can choose this option saying that yes, generate a full backup of the database and restore it onto the secondary database. So if you select this one, it will take the full line log backup from your primary database and it will restore onto the secondary server by itself. And the second option is if you already took a backup and kept it someplace but not yet restored. So that time you can select this option and provide the backup file location and it will automatically restore those backups. And the third is no, the secondary database is initialized. That's what we did. We have already restored them on the secondary server, so we don't need a SQL at this point. We ourselves did that manually. And again, it is a good practice to do these things manually. If you just go and select the first or second option, then it will be out of your control. And go to the second tab, there's a copy files, and this is more about creating a copy job. So you need to provide where you want to copy your files on your secondary server. The first thing we have done with the backup settings, so the backups will come into the backup folder, and when you copy the backup files, you need to provide the location where you want to keep those files on the secondary server. So where did I keep? This is my copy folder. So in real, it will be on your secondary server. Okay, just provide it. And again, I don't want to run it for every 15 minutes, so I change the schedule to 3 minutes. And okay, sorry. Then after you can see another tab, which is a restore. So this is the last one we are going to do. How you want to restore the log backups. So the first thing what we have done is backup the backup settings to backup the log backup and keep it in backup folder, and then copy that gonna pick up the log backup from your primary server and put it in a folder in your secondary server, and then the restore job will come and it will restore that log backup to the database. So how you want to restore that? Is it using no recovery mode or standby mode? So there are two options here. But having said that, we would like to use the advantage of the standby mode. So we go with the standby mode. And then after, you can see disconnect users in the database when restoring backups. What it means is as this is everything is an automated process. For every 3 minutes it gonna take a backup. For every 3 minutes it gonna copy that backup file onto the secondary, and for every 3 minutes that backup will be restored. So while restoring that backup, SQL Server require an exclusive lock on the database because it is restoring the database. So during that time, SQL Server doesn't want anyone accessing the database. So this option, when you select this option, what it means is before a restore job runs, it will forcefully disconnect all the users from the database, and then a restore action will start. And this restore job will be created again on your secondary. So I'm going to change the schedule back to 3 minutes. And if you think you have another secondary, I have just added one secondary. If you think if you have another secondary, then you can just click on add and provide the another secondary server and the other details as well. If you have monitor server, then you can check here and provide the monitor server name. So again, at bottom you can see script configuration. What all the settings we have done till now on this wizard. If you want to have a script, you can still select this option. It will script out everything on your query. So this is what the script has been generated. Either you can execute this command or you can just click on this. If you just click on OK, your log shipping will be set up. The advantage of having a script is if you want to reconfigure it, everything, maybe there's something went wrong and your database got deleted from your secondary server and you want to reset it up everything. So in that case, you just need to re-execute this query. So we have set up a log shipping, and having said that, the 3 jobs will be created. The first backup job will be created on your primary server. So expand the jobs, refresh, and you can see there is a one job, that is ls backup job, and this job will run for every 3 minutes and take a backup log backup on this location. So let us check whether it ran or not. No, it did not run it. So probably we might need to wait for another couple of minutes. So once the backup job runs, we should be able to see a backup file over here. Let me open activity monitor. Okay, you can see this is executing now. So we should expect a backup file here. Yes, backup is also available. So we can refresh. The backup is completed successfully, and if I expand this, you can see on right side the next run and the last run. The last run was at 5:57 and the next run is at 6 p.m. So we have scheduled it to run for every 3 minutes. So the backup job is done. So it keeps on taking the backup of that database, the log backup of the database for every 3 minutes, and it keeps in this location. And then we have a copy folder, right? So the copy job on your secondary. So this is my secondary. Go to job, refresh the jobs, and this is my copy job, and then this is my restore job. So let me open activity monitor, and my copy job, it did not kicked up till now. Okay, so the next run, it haven't scheduled it. Yeah, I've scheduled it. All right, so it should run within a few minutes. Let me check the job schedule. It's every 3 minutes. Alright, it should run now. Maybe at 6 p.m. this job would kick off. The both copy and restore job will kick off, but by the time the restore job runs, still the file will not be available in the copy folder. So you can go back to your secondary database, and I have got the tables here. Okay, so once this enter process runs, we try to do a small change on our primary database, and we manually run the jobs. We don't want to wait for another 9 minutes to have that change on the other side. So I manually kick off all the jobs one by one, and we can see how the data will get on the other side. It's not scheduled or what? Okay, it's already enabled. PM for 3 minutes. Okay, but for now let me run it, and I will debug on that one. Oh, seems it started now. Okay, SQL Server agent is not currently running. Right. It's not displaying because the SQL Server agent service is not running for this instance. So let me refresh and check this instance. Yes, the agent service is not running. I need to check what happened. Okay, it was set to manual, so that is the reason it did not picked up automatically. Okay, all right. So it should run now. Activity monitor, refresh. The next run is at 6 hours 3 minutes. So okay, let me wait for another 30 or 40 seconds, and we expect that backup file to come in this copy folder. Here, so you can see here we have got two files. It is because in backup folder it runs for every 3 minutes, right? So it took 5:57 a full a log backup, 6 o'clock a log backup. So we started our log backup with a delay of 3 minutes, right? So by the time there were two log backups available, so it copied those two log backups in this copy folder, and then after the restore job, it will restore those two log backups onto the database. So now what I do is we try to do some changes on our primary database, and let's see how it reflects on our secondary database. So I create a new table, create table tpl underscore test ls, just a dummy table. I'm creating a dummy table on my primary instance, so you can expand and check this table. So the table got created, and you can now go back to your secondary server, to the database, expand, do a refresh, and you can see the table is not yet present. It is because it take 9 minutes to appear here. 3 minutes for backup, there's a 3 minutes delay for copy, there's a 3 minutes delay for restore. So in total it takes 9 minutes. So I don't want to just sit idle for another 9 minutes to kick it off automatically. So what I do is I manually run those jobs. So I run this backup job. I'm just starting them manually, that's it. And go to the copy job. This is my copy job. Right click and start. Okay, files got copied onto the secondary server, and then restore them. Perfect. So now we should be able to see that table appearing on this secondary server. So refresh and check, the table got here. So this is how the log shipping works. So any questions? In case of failover, let's assume this server is down. So let me stop this instance. Assume your primary server is down. Okay. I'm just stopping the primary SQL instance. The users who are all currently connecting to this instance, I think it's gonna time out. The SQL services were stopped. You can go back and check here. Let me do a refresh. You can see here for the default instance, the services are down. So I can't connect this server at this moment. This instance is down. I can't connect to this. So let me show you. If I try to connect it, it will show me an error. You can see the server is down. So in this case, you are required to bring your database online on this instance. The primary server is down and users are eagerly waiting to do their project work, and you have to bring this database online. At this stage they can only read the data, but they cannot update the data in this database. So you want to make this database online and updatable. So for that, what you can do is, there are two options. The first is, if there are any pending log backups, go back here, and if there are any pending log backups available, restore the last log backup if there is a pending not yet restored, restore that last log backup onto this database with recovery option. So we know that if we restore a backup with recovery option, the database will come online, right? Assume all your log backups are restored. Whatever the log backups have got here, they are already restored on this instance. And you don't have any further pending log backups which can be restored. Then that time, how do I bring my database online? It is with the help of a query, the simple query. How to know whether it is restored or not? We need to browse the system tables. We need to browse the system tables in MSDB database to find out at what extent the restore will happen. So let me try to show you. But it's a bit, we need to join certain tables. I think there should be a restore history. Yeah. These are all the backups that were happening. This is a log backup. L indicates log backup. It's a device. Log shipping, monitor history. There will be some system tables. No, this is not. Restore file. There's a different. Let me browse it. Okay, it's log shipping monitor secondary. It is log shipping monitor secondary. This is the database. So this is the table. Okay, so this is the last copied file, and you can see here this is the last restored file. So you can find it out in this table. So you can see which is 602. So go back to your copy folder, and this is the one. This is the last restored file. So you can see here almost all the files. This is the latest file, and it also got restored with the database. So at this moment, I don't have any further log backups available to restore on this database, but still I have to bring my database online. So for that, we can use a command restore database name with recovery. So this is a simple command you can use, and you can bring your database back to online without restoring any log backups. So if I execute this command, your database will now come online, and at the same time your log shipping will be broken. So you can access and you can modify the data over here, and the next upcoming copy and restore job will now start fail. It's because your database is now online and you cannot restore further any log backups on it. So you have to, once your primary server is back online, you have to configure log shipping from scratch again. So is it clear? Any questions? Nitin, Ishwar, Nagavendra, do you have any questions? Okay, all right. That's it. Hope you understand today's session, and as usual, I'm expecting you to do a practice session, try to configure it, and if you have any issues or concerns, please let me know. And thank you guys. I'm closing the call now.